My name is Ngozi Eze, and I want to tell you about a man I met outside a pharmacy in my village on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. I want to tell you what he said to me and what happened after. But first, I need you to understand who I was before I met him. Because what he said only makes sense if you understand what it landed on. I was 34 years old. I had spent 10 years building a life in Lagos that I was proud of, in the specific, hard-won way of someone who had built it without anyone handing her anything. Senior manager at a financial services firm. A flat in Yaba that I paid for myself. A salary that made my mother go quiet for a full minute when I told her what it was. I had done the work, all of it, and Lagos, in its way, had acknowledged that. And then, in the space of 1 year, I lost all of it. Not to bad luck, not to illness, to a man who was very good at looking like a partner while operating as something else entirely. A maker. 4 years. A business we planned together that turned out to have been planned only by him, for him, using everything I brought to it as fuel. My savings, my contacts, my reorganized professional life, my name signed onto things that I did not fully read because I trusted him, and trust, when it is placed in the wrong person, costs exactly as much as everything you gave them. When it ended completely. The business, the relationship, and because the line between my professional and personal life had been deliberately blurred in ways I only understood afterward, my job. I resigned on a Wednesday. I sat in my flat that evening and I looked at what remained. The number in my account, the contacts who were suddenly, collectively very busy, the future I had been building in my head that had never existed anywhere except in my head. And then I packed a bag and I went home. I want to ask you something before I go further. Have you ever had to return somewhere as less than who you left as? Not just physically, I mean in the way you carry yourself, in what you are able to say when people ask how things are going, in the walk from the bus stop to your mother's house when you know the whole village knows why you are walking it. Because that walk, I want to tell you about that walk. From the bus stop to my mother's house is exactly 1 kilometer. I have walked it 1,000 times. I know the curve near the old cotton tree. I know the stretch that floods in the rainy season. I know the 3 houses in a row that have been there since before I was born. I know that walk the way you know your own face. But that day, carrying a bag that was too light because everything worth carrying had been taken, I felt every single meter of it. Not in my legs, in my chest, in the specific weight of being seen in the moment of your reduction by people who remember when you were something else. I felt it in every step. My mother opened the door before I knocked. She looked at me. She did not say anything about what she could see clearly on my face and in my bag and in the way I was holding my shoulders. She said, "Sit down, I will make food." I sat, she made food. She put it in front of me and watched me eat with the particular attention of a mother who is reading her child without asking her to speak before she is ready. When I finished, she said, "Sleep, we will talk in the morning." I slept. For the first time in weeks, I actually slept. Not deeply, not without interruption, but enough. There is something about a mother's house that allows certain kinds of exhaustion to put themselves down. I do not know how to explain it more precisely than that. But if you have ever returned to your mother's house when everything else was broken, you know exactly what I mean. The village received me the way villages receive returning failures, which is to say, loudly and in my absence. I did not hear what was said directly. I did not need to. I had grown up watching this happen to other people, and I knew the rhythms of how information moved in a place like this. Now I was the information. I stayed inside for 5 days, not hiding, preparing.
preparing to perform the version of myself that the village would require when I went outside. The version that explained without oversharing, acknowledged without collapsing, held its shape under the particular pressure of collective public observation. On the 6th day, I went out. I needed tomatoes. My mother needed her blood pressure medication. Simple errands, the kind that require movement and nothing else. Now, I want to ask you something. When you are at your lowest point, when you have lost the thing you spent years building and you are back somewhere you swore you had outgrown, what do you look for? What are you hoping someone will say to you? Or are you past hoping for words and just trying to get through the day? Tell me in the comments, because what happened to me at that pharmacy was so specific and so strange that I want to know if anything like it has happened to you. He was sitting on the bench outside the pharmacy. An old man, not someone I recognized, which was unusual. In a village this size, you recognize everyone, or at least you recognize their face as part of the landscape, even if you cannot name them. He was looking at nothing in particular, the way very old people sometimes look at the air in front of them as if they can see something in it that younger people cannot. I walked past him to go inside. He said without looking at me, "You came back carrying less than you left with." I stopped. I turned and looked at him. He was still looking at the air in front of him. He had not looked at me. I said nothing. I was calculating. Who is this person? How does he know me? What does he want? The calculations of a woman who has recently learned what it costs to trust without calculating. He said, "That is not always a loss. Sometimes you only find out what you are made of when the things built on top of you are removed." I said, "I lost everything." He said, "You lost what was placed on top of you. That is different from losing what is in you. You are still here, the same woman who walked out of this village 10 years ago. That woman had something in her that Lagos did not give her and Emeka could not take. It is still in you. You cannot see it right now because you are too close to the loss, but it is there. It was always there." I stood completely still on the path outside that pharmacy. He had used Emeka's name. I had not told anyone in this village that name. I had not told my mother that name. I had only said that a business partnership had gone wrong and a relationship had ended and I had lost my job. I had not given names. I said, "How do you know that name?"
He turned and looked at me for the first time. His eyes were very clear, the kind of clear that belongs to people who have either seen everything or understood everything, or both. He said, "Go home. Rest properly this time, not just for a night. Rest until the grief has finished moving through you. And when you are ready, not when this village thinks you should be ready, when you are ready, when you wake up one morning and the first thing you feel is not loss, but possibility, start again. Not the same thing, something new, built on what is in you, not on what was given to you or what you borrowed or what you constructed with someone who did not deserve the construction, on you alone. That is the only foundation that cannot be taken." He looked away again. I stood there for a moment longer. Then I went inside and collected my mother's medication. When I came out, the bench was empty. I looked up and down the path. There was no one. I asked the pharmacist about him. I described him, his age, his face, the bench he had been sitting on. She looked at me with a slightly puzzled expression. She said, "What old man? Nobody sits on that bench regularly. People wait there sometimes, but it is not anyone's spot." I described him again, more specifically. She thought about it. She said she did not know who I was describing. I walked home slowly. I thought about what he had said. I thought about the name he had used. I thought about the clarity of his eyes and the complete absence of him when I came back out of that pharmacy. I did not tell my mother. I did not tell anyone. I put it away in the part of myself that holds things that cannot be explained and that do not need to be explained in order to be real. And then I started listening to what he had told me. The rest is not a dramatic story. I want to be honest with you about that.
The rest is 18 months of the quiet, unglamorous daily work of rebuilding, of finding out which parts of what I had built were genuinely mine and which parts had depended on infrastructure that no longer existed, of making mistakes in the smaller context of a smaller start and correcting them without the cushion of a salary and a title. I will tell you some of what that looked like. I stayed in my mother's village for 3 months, not 2 weeks, not 1 month, 3 months. I rested the way the old man had told me to until the grief finished moving through me. I did not rush it. I did not perform recovery for the benefit of the village or my family. I let it take the time it took. During those 3 months, I made a list, a quiet one in a notebook my mother gave me, a list of what I actually knew, not what I had been positioned as knowing, not what my job title had implied I knew, but what I could genuinely do if you removed everything else and left me with only myself. The list was shorter than I wanted it to be, but every item on it was real. When I was ready, and I knew I was ready because I woke up one morning and the first thought I had was not about Emeka or the firm or the walk from the bus stop, but about a specific gap in the market for small business financial consulting that I had noticed during my time in Lagos and never had the space to pursue. When I was ready, I left. I went back to Lagos, not to the same firm, not to the same neighborhood, not to the same version of myself, to the city itself, which does not care about your history and does not hold your past against you, but also does not give you anything you have not earned. I found a small office space, shared desk arrangement, no private office, no nameplate on a door. I registered a business, a real one, in my name only. I contacted 3 people I had worked with in my early years at the logistics company, before Emeka, before the financial services firm, before all of it, people who knew my actual work and not my recent story. 2 of them became my first clients. I want to ask you something. If you were starting again from nothing, genuinely from nothing, not a polished version of nothing, but actual nothing, 1 rented desk and 2 clients and a business account with a balance that made you laugh slightly when you looked at it, what would you hold on to? What would you remind yourself of on the days when the progress was invisible? Because there were many days when the progress was invisible, and on those days I thought about the bench outside the pharmacy, about a man whose name I never learned and whose existence nobody else in that village could confirm, about 3 sentences that landed on exactly the right person at exactly the right moment. You lost what was placed on top of you, not what is in you. I said that to myself many times in the first year, many times in the second year. I said it on the day a client told me my work had saved his business from a tax assessment that would have ended it. I said it on the day I hired my first employee, a young woman fresh from university who reminded me of myself at that age in ways that made me careful to be the kind of employer I had not always had. I said it on the day my account balance crossed the number that told me the business was real, that it was going to last, that it was mine in a way that nothing had been mine before because it was built on nothing except what was in me. I went back to the village the month that happened, not to announce anything, just to go, to sit at my mother's table and eat her food and let the weekend be a weekend. On Sunday afternoon, I walked to the pharmacy. The bench outside was empty and warm in the afternoon sun. I stood there for a moment. I thought about a Tuesday afternoon 2.5 years ago, about a bag that was too light, about the walk from the bus stop, about a man with clear eyes who used a name I never gave him and said 3 sentences that changed what I was able to do with the time that followed. I did not understand, and still do not understand, what he was or where he came from or how he knew what he knew. I have made my peace with not understanding it. Some things are not given to be understood, they are given to be received and then acted on. I received it, I acted on it. The bench was empty, the afternoon was warm, behind me the village went about its Sunday, ahead of me the road stretched back toward the bus stop and the bus that would take me back to Lagos, to the office with my name registered above the door, to the work that was mine completely. I stood there for one more moment, and then I walked. Not the same walk as before, never the same walk again. God does not send messengers to comfort you. He sends them to equip you, and the equipment he gives is never what you think you need. It is exactly what you need. The difference between those two things is the whole lesson. I am still learning it. I expect I will be learning it for the rest of my life, but I am learning it on my feet, moving forward, on a foundation that nobody can remove because it was built from the only material that truly belongs to me: everything I am.